The Galactic Concorde had watched Earth for 300 years. They had ships that could cross between stars in days. They had technology that humans could not even dream of. And they had rules about which species deserved respect and which did not. Earth was planet 7291C in their records. It sat in a small corner of the galaxy, circling an ordinary yellow sun. The aliens who watched it had seen thousands of worlds like this one. Most of them held life. Some of that life was intelligent. But very few species ever earned the right to join the Concorde. Humans, they decided, were not one of those species. Ambassador Talus stood before the High Council on the capital world. He was Vetheri, one of the oldest races in the galaxy. His body was tall and thin with skin like polished silver. His eyes were completely black, and they showed no emotion as he spoke. "I have completed my study of the humans," he said. His voice did not come from his mouth. The Vetheri spoke with their minds, sending thoughts directly to those around them. They are a violent species. They fight wars over small pieces of land. They kill each other because of the color of their skin or the gods they pray to. They have poisoned their own air and water. The council members listened in silence. There were 12 of them, each from a different species. All of them had telepathy. All of them could share thoughts without words. This was the mark of true intelligence, they believed. Any species worth respecting could speak mind to mind. "Do they have any telepathic ability?" asked one council member. "None," Talus replied. "They communicate through sounds. They push air through their throats and shape it with their mouths. It is primitive. It is slow. It is barely better than the calls of animals." "And the universal frequency?" Talus made a gesture that meant disgust. "They have no connection to it. They cannot hear it. They cannot speak it. They are deaf and mute to the divine language that connects all worthy life." The council made their decision quickly. Earth would be quarantined. A field of energy would surround their solar system, keeping them trapped inside. They would not be contacted. They would not be helped. The Concorde would simply wait for them to destroy themselves, as primitive species always did. On Earth, no one knew that this had happened. Humans continued their lives. They went to work. They raised children. They fought and loved and dreamed of the stars. They did not know that the stars had already given up on them. But in a small university in Seoul, a young woman named Yuna was finding something strange. Yuna was a linguist. She studied languages, both old and new. She loved the way words could carry meaning across time. A poem written 2,000 years ago could still make people cry today. A song from a forgotten culture could still make hearts beat faster. This was magic to her, even if no one else seemed to notice. She had been reading ancient texts for her research. Old religious songs. Prayers from civilizations long dead. Poetry carved into stone before humans could write on paper. And she was finding patterns that should not exist. "Look at this," she said to her colleague one evening. His name was Do-hwan, and he was an astrophysicist. He studied stars and signals from space. He had no interest in old poems, but Yuna was his friend, and she seemed excited. "What am I looking at?" he asked, staring at the papers she had spread across the table. "These are songs from different cultures. This one is from ancient Korea. This one is from Egypt. This one is from a tribe in South America that died out 500 years ago. They never met each other. They lived thousands of kilometers apart, thousands of years apart. Okay, so? So they all have the same mathematical structure." Yuna pointed at her notes. "The rhythm, the pitch, the pattern of sounds. They match. Not exactly, but close enough that it cannot be an accident." Do-hwan frowned. "That is strange. But it could just be how human brains work. Maybe we all naturally make similar patterns. I thought so too. But then I found this. Yuna pulled up something on her computer. It was a graph showing sound waves. I converted one of the songs into a frequency pattern, and I compared it to the signal you showed me last month, the one from deep space that you could not explain. Dawan's eyes went wide. He remembered that signal. It had come from somewhere beyond their solar system. It did not match any natural phenomenon. It did not match any human transmission. He filed it away as a mystery to solve later. They match? He asked. They match, Yuna said. The frequencies are almost identical. Dawan, either humans have been receiving a message from space for thousands of years and hiding it in our music, or we have been sending a message without knowing it. Far away, orbiting Neptune, a veterinary analyst named Kira was having a very bad night. Her job was simple. She monitored Earth's transmissions, radio signals, television broadcasts, the noisy electronic chatter of a primitive world. Most of it was boring. Humans talking about nothing. Humans selling things to each other. Humans making strange sounds they called music. But tonight, her instruments were showing something impossible. A signal was coming from Earth. It was hidden in their music, woven through their broadcasts. And it was resonating with frequencies that Kira recognized from her oldest training files. The founding frequency. The language of the architects. The divine tongue that the Concord had been searching for since the beginning of their civilization. It was coming from the savages. Kira sent her report to her commander. An hour later, the report was deleted. A message came back to her. False reading. Equipment error. Do not report again. But Kira had saved a copy, and she knew what she had heard. The primitives were singing in the language of gods, and nobody wanted to listen. 50 years passed. Humans did not destroy themselves like the Concord expected. Instead, they did something that surprised everyone. They found a way out. The energy field around Earth's solar system was strong. It was built to stop any ship from leaving. But humans were clever in ways that the aliens did not understand. They studied the field. They tested it. They failed 100 times. And then they succeeded. The ship was called Horizon's Edge. It was small and ugly by galactic standards. Its engines were loud and crude. Its metal hull was thick and heavy because humans did not have the technology to make it lighter. But it worked. It punched through the quarantine field like a fist through paper. Captain Jiho stood on the bridge as alarm screamed around him. He was 43 years old, with gray at his temples and scars on his hands from years of military service. Around his wrist, he wore prayer beads that had belonged to his grandmother. She had given them to him when he was a boy. "We are through," said his navigator, a woman named Sujin. She was young, only 28, but she was the best pilot humanity had. Her hands were steady on the controls, even as the ship shook. "Good," Jiho said. "Now let us see who has been keeping us in a cage." They did not have to wait long. 12 warships appeared around them in seconds. They were Vethri vessels, silver and smooth, shaped like drops of liquid metal. Each one was larger than any building on Earth. Each one carried weapons that could crack a moon in half. The lead ship sent a message, but it was not a radio signal. It was not a sound. It was a thought, pushed directly into the minds of everyone on Horizon's Edge. Primitive species. You have broken the quarantine. You will surrender your vessel and submit to judgment. Resistance will result in immediate destruction. The crew of Horizon's Edge grabbed their heads in pain. The telepathic message was not gentle. It was meant to hurt. It was meant to show them how weak they were. Jiho felt the pressure in his skull like a knife being pushed into his brain. He fell to his knees. Around him, his crew was screaming. But Sujin was not screaming. She was humming. At first, Jiho thought he was imagining it. The pain was so strong that his senses were confused. But no, she was really humming. It was a song he recognized. A lullaby. The same one his grandmother had sung to him when he was afraid. "What are you doing?" he managed to ask. "Fighting back," Sujin said. Her voice was strained, but she was smiling. "My mother taught me this. When the world is loud, you make your own sound. You do not let them silence you." Other crew members heard her. Some of them began to hum too. Different songs, different melodies. A folk tune from Bizin, a church hymn from a small village, a pop song that had been popular 10 years ago. It did not matter what the song was. What mattered was that they were singing. Chief Engineer Tai Wu was at his station in the engine room. He was a big man with rough hands and a rough voice. He had never been a good singer, but right now he was singing louder than anyone. It was a work song that his father had taught him, the kind that men sang when they were tired but could not stop. The sound spread through the ship. 73 humans, all singing different songs, all at the same time. It should have been chaos. It should have been noise. But somehow, it became something else. On the Vethri flagship, alarms began to sound. Commander Torai had led 100 battles. He had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds. He had never felt fear in combat. But right now, something cold was crawling up his spine. "What is happening?" he demanded. "The primitive vessel is broadcasting something," one of his officers reported. "Our telepaths are being affected. They cannot maintain the subjugation protocol." "Affected how?" The officer hesitated. "They are feeling things, emotions, memories that are not theirs." "Commander, 3 of our telepaths have collapsed. They are crying, and they do not know why." Torai stared at the small human ship on his screen. It looked like nothing. A metal box with engines strapped to it. It should not be able to hurt them. And yet his most powerful telepaths were falling like children. "Cut the connection," he ordered. Now, the telepathic assault stopped. The pressure in Jiho's head disappeared. He stood up slowly, using the captain's chair to steady himself. His crew was still singing, their voices filling the bridge with sound. "They stopped," Sujin said. "We hurt them." Jiho nodded. His hands were shaking, but not from fear. He reached for the communication panel and opened a channel that would broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Jiho of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge," he said. His voice was steady. His grandmother would have been proud. "We come in peace. We mean no harm to you or your people. But you attacked us without warning and without cause." He paused. The singing behind him had quieted, but it had not stopped. It was a soft sound now, a hum of many voices. "I do not know who you are," Jiho continued. "I do not know why you kept us trapped in our own solar system. But I know this. If you attack us again, we will defend ourselves. And you just learned what our defense sounds like." There was a long silence. Then Terai's voice came through the speaker. It was a real voice this time, not a telepathic message. He sounded tired. "What are you?" he asked. Jiho smiled. "We are human. We are the species you called savages. And we have been singing since before your ancestors learned to walk." He looked at his crew. At Sujin, still humming her mother's lullaby. At Taiwu, whose rough voice was softer now but still strong. At all of them, these ordinary people who had just done something impossible. "Now," Jiho said, "take us to whoever is in charge. We have a lot to talk about." The Vethri records would later call this moment the incident of harmonic assault. They would write long reports about the unexpected weapon that humans possessed. They would study and analyze and theorize. But the crew of Horizon's Edge had a simpler name for it. They called it the day humanity found its voice, and the galaxy would never be quiet again. The Galactic Concord demanded answers. How had a primitive species hurt their telepaths? How had simple sounds broken through defenses that had protected them for thousands of years? No one had weapons like this. No one had ever fought with music before. They sent for Earth's representative. They wanted explanations. They wanted to understand what kind of threat they were facing. Dr. Yuna arrived at the council chamber 3 months after the incident. She was older now, with gray in her black hair and lines around her eyes. But her mind was sharp, and she had spent years preparing for this moment. The mystery she had found in those ancient songs had led her here, to the center of galactic power. The chamber was enormous. The ceiling rose so high that she could not see the top. The walls were covered with symbols from 100 different species. 12 council members sat in a half circle before her, each one representing a civilization that had existed for longer than humans had been walking upright. Ambassador Talus was there too. He stood to the side, watching Yuna with his black eyes. He was the one who had called humanity savages. He was the one who had recommended leaving them to die. Yuna was not afraid of him. She had something he did not. She had answers. "You may speak," said the council leader, a being made of light and crystal. Its voice echoed in her mind and ears at the same time. Yuna bowed her head in respect. Then she began. "Thank you for seeing me. I know you have questions about what happened when your ships met ours. I am here to explain as best as I can." She held up a small device. It was simple technology by galactic standards, but it would serve her purpose. "First, I want to ask you something. Why do you believe telepathy is the highest form of communication?" Talus made a sound of disgust. "Because it is direct. Mind to mind. There is no confusion, no misunderstanding. It is pure." "Pure," Yuna repeated. "Yes, I can see why you would think that. When you share a thought, the other person receives exactly what you meant to send. Nothing is lost. Nothing is changed." She smiled. It was not a kind smile. But nothing is gained either. The council members shifted in their seats. They were not used to being challenged by a primitive. "Let me show you something," Yuna said. She activated her device. Music filled the chamber. It was a simple song, nothing special. A children's choir from a school in Seoul, singing a folk tune that was 400 years old. The words were in Korean, a language none of the aliens understood. But understanding the words did not matter. The council leader, the being of light and crystal, began to flicker. The colors of its body shifted in patterns that Yuna had never seen before. A Khazari philosopher, old and wise, lowered his head. His 4 eyes were closed. Even Talus, the cold ambassador, who had no love for humans, stood very still. His black eyes were not empty anymore. Something moved behind them. The song ended. Silence filled the chamber. "What was that?" the council leader asked. Its voice was quieter now. "That was human language," Yuna said. "Not words. Not grammar. Not information. That was how we truly communicate." She walked forward, closer to the council. "You see, you made a mistake when you judged us. You thought that because we make sounds with our mouths, our communication is primitive. You thought that because our messages travel through air instead of mind, they are weak. But you missed something important." She stopped in front of Talus. "When I speak a word, it carries more than meaning. It carries feeling. It carries memory. It carries the weight of every person who has ever spoken that word before me. When I sing a song, I am connected to everyone who has ever sung it, to everyone who has ever heard it, to everyone who will sing it after I am gone." Talus tried to respond with telepathy. He tried to send a thought to dismiss her. But his mind felt strange, heavy, like something was pressing against it from the outside. Your telepathy is fast, Yuna continued. It is accurate, but it is cold. When you send a thought, it arrives dead. It has no heartbeat. It has no soul. Human language is slower, yes. It is messier. Sometimes we misunderstand each other, but every word we speak is alive. She turned back to the full council. For thousands of years you have been searching for something. You call it the universal frequency, the divine language, the voice of the beings who created life in this galaxy. You have built temples to find it. You have conquered worlds to search for it. You have destroyed species who you thought were blocking your search. The council was silent. They knew this was true. It was the greatest mission of their civilization, finding the voice of the architects. I have good news and bad news, Yuna said. The good news is that the divine language exists. It is real. I have proof. She paused. The bad news is that you have been deaf to it your entire existence. The divine language is not telepathy. It is not mathematics. It is not light or energy or any of the things you have been searching for. She sang a single note, pure and clear. The same note that human mothers had sung to their children for 100,000 years. It is song, she said. It is emotion carried on vibration. It is the cry of a baby and the laugh of a lover and the last breath of the dying. It is every piece of music ever written, every prayer ever spoken, every poem ever remembered. The chamber was completely still. The architects did not give you the divine language, Yuna said. They gave it to us, to the savages, to the primitives who could not speak mind to mind. And we have been using it every single day since the beginning of our species. She looked at Talus, at his black eyes, at the emotions he could not hide. You called us savages because we could not do what you could do. But we are not savages. We are singers. And we have been waiting to meet you for a very long time. The council leader finally spoke. Why? Why would the architects give such a gift to a species like yours? Yuna smiled. This time, it was gentle. Because we needed it more. You have telepathy. You can share your thoughts perfectly. But we had nothing. We were alone in our heads, trapped behind walls of bone and flesh. So we learned to build bridges. We learned to reach across the gap between one mind and another using nothing but sound and hope. She put her hand over her heart. That is what the divine language is. It is the sound that connects us all. And the architects knew that only a species that truly needed connection would learn to speak it. She stepped back and bowed. Now you have a choice. You can keep calling us savages. You can try to destroy us. Or you can listen. Really listen. And maybe, if you try very hard, you can learn to sing too. The council looked at each other. 1,000 years of belief was falling apart in front of them. Everything they thought they knew about the universe was wrong. And somewhere in the distance, a human woman began to hum. The truth broke the galaxy in two. Some species heard what Yuna said and felt hope. For centuries, they had searched for meaning. They had built empires and destroyed worlds looking for something greater than themselves. And now a primitive species from a small planet had given them an answer. But others felt rage. The Vethri were the angriest of all. Their entire civilization was built on telepathy. They believed they were the highest form of life because they could speak mind to mind. They had conquered and judged and ruled because they thought they were closer to the bind than anyone else. And now a human woman with gray hair and a simple voice had told them they were wrong. Not just wrong, deaf, blind, missing the most important thing in the universe, while the savages had held it in their hands all along. Ambassador Talus returned to his home world 3 days after Yuna's speech. He stood before the Vethri High Command and gave his report. The humans cannot be allowed to spread this lie, he said. If other species believe them, our authority will collapse. Everything we have built will fall apart. What do you suggest? Asked the High Commander. Talus did not hesitate. We destroy them. All of them. Before their poison spreads any further. The Vethri fleet began to gather. 10,000 warships. The largest force ever assembled in galactic history. Their mission was simple. Go to Earth. Kill every human. Burn their world until nothing was left. They called it a cleansing. A removal of a mimetic threat. They told themselves they were protecting the galaxy. But deep inside, they knew the truth. They were afraid. They were so afraid of what the humans represented that they would rather commit genocide than face it. On Earth, Jiho received the news. He was an admiral now, commander of the entire human fleet. It was not a large fleet. Earth had been isolated for so long that their ships were still crude compared to the aliens. They had maybe 500 vessels that could fight. 500 against 10,000. How long do we have? He asked. His intelligence officer, a quiet man named Minho, checked his data. 3 months. Maybe less if they push their engines. Jiho nodded slowly. He was 60 years old now. His hair was completely gray. His hands still carried the prayer beads from his grandmother, though the string was worn and the beads were smooth from years of touching. Call a meeting, he said. Every world leader, every general, everyone who matters. We need to decide what we are going to do. The meeting was held in a bunker under the mountains of Korea. Leaders from every nation sat around a long table. They had put aside their differences for this. They had to. This was not about countries anymore. This was about survival. We cannot win a straight fight, said General Park, the commander of Earth's ground forces. Their ships are too strong. Their weapons are too powerful. Even if we threw everything we had at them, we would barely scratch their fleet. Then we surrender, said someone from the back of the room. We apologize. We take back what Yuna said. Maybe they will let us live. Jiho shook his head. They will not accept surrender. I have talked to their commanders. They are not coming to punish us. They are coming to erase us. They want to pretend we never existed. Silence fell over the room. Everyone understood what that meant. This was the end. Not just of their lives, but of their species. Of everything humanity had ever been or could ever become. Sujin stood up. She was older too, with lines around her eyes, but she still had the same calm voice that had sung through the telepathic assault all those years ago. Then we do not fight them with ships, she said. We fight them with what we have always had. Our voices. People looked at her like she was crazy, but Jiho was listening. Explain, he said. Sujin walked to the center of the room. When we first met the Vethri, their telepathy hurt us. It was designed to break our minds. But we sang, and it hurt them instead. Not because singing is a weapon, because singing is connection. It is feeling. And they had never felt anything like it before. She looked around at the faces watching her. The Vethri are coming to destroy us because they are scared. They are scared because Yuna showed them something they do not understand. Something that made them feel things they have never felt. If we can do that again on a larger scale, we might be able to stop them. General Park laughed bitterly. You want to sing at them? While they are shooting at us. Yes, Sujin said. I want to broadcast every song humanity has ever written directly at their fleet. Every prayer. Every lullaby. Every war cry. Everything we are. Everything we have been, all at once. Let them feel what it means to be human. The room erupted in arguments. Some people called it insane. Others called it surrender with extra steps. But a few were listening. A few remembered what had happened on the horizon's edge, what a handful of voices had done to a Vethri warship. Jiho raised his hand. The room went quiet. "It might not work," he said slowly. "We might all die anyway. But if we are going to die, I would rather die singing than die shooting." He stood up, his prayer beads clicking softly against each other. "And maybe, just maybe, some of them will listen. Maybe one ship will stop. Maybe one commander will feel what we feel and understand why we are worth saving. That is more than we will achieve with guns." He looked at Taiwu, who was sitting in the corner. The old engineer had been quiet the whole meeting. "Can you build it?" Jiho asked. "A broadcast system strong enough to reach their entire fleet?" Taiwu rubbed his chin. "I will need every satellite we have, every transmitter, every radio tower, and I will need help from someone who understands alien frequencies." Jiho smiled. "I know just the person." 3 months later, the system was ready. Dowan had designed the frequency patterns. Taiwu had built the transmitters. And Yuna had organized the recordings. Every song, every prayer, every piece of music from every culture that had or existed on Earth. It was the largest collection of human expression ever assembled. And they were going to fire it at an invasion fleet like a weapon made of hope. Jiho stood on the bridge of the command station, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, 10,000 ships were coming to kill everyone he loved. He touched his grandmother's prayer beads and began to hum. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "at least they will remember us." The Vethri fleet arrived on a cold morning in December. 10,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. They spread out in a pattern that covered the sky like a net. Each ship was armed with weapons that could boil oceans and crack continents. Together, they carried enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. Commander Torai stood on the bridge of the flagship. He was the same officer who had faced the horizon's edge all those years ago. The same one who had felt human music push against his mind for the first time. He had been promoted many times since then, but he had never forgotten that day. He had also never stopped dreaming about it. "Begin the approach," he ordered. His voice was steady. His emotions were not. The fleet moved toward Earth. Scanners showed the human defenses. 500 small ships. Orbital stations. Satellites. It was nothing. It was a joke. This would not even be a battle. It would be an execution. But something was wrong. "Commander," one of his officers said, "we are detecting unusual activity on the planet's surface." "What kind of activity?" "Broadcasting. They are broadcasting something on every frequency we can detect. Radio, quantum, even gravitational waves. The entire planet is transmitting." Torai felt the cold feeling return. The same feeling from all those years ago. What are they transmitting? Unknown. It appears to be music, Commander. They are transmitting music. On Earth, 8 billion people raised their voices. It was not organized. It was not planned to the last detail. It was beautiful chaos. In every city, in every village, in every home, people were singing. Some sang in groups. Some sang alone. Some sang songs they had known since childhood. Some sang songs they had only just learned. A grandmother in Bazan sang a lullaby to her grandchildren as they watched the sky through their window. A choir in Seoul performed in the street, their voices echoing off the buildings. A fisherman on the coast hummed a tune that his father had taught him, a song about the sea and the stars. And above them all, the broadcast network that Taiwu and Dowan had built collected every voice, every song, every prayer and cry and whisper. It gathered them together and sent them out into space, toward the fleet that had come to kill them. Jiho stood on the command station, watching the monitors. He could see the Vethry ships getting closer. He could see the weapons powering up. He could see his own death approaching. But he could also hear the singing. It came through the speakers, through the walls, through everything. The sound of his entire species refusing to be silent. He touched his grandmother's prayer beads and added his voice to the chorus. On the Vethry flagship, the telepaths began to scream. The broadcast hit them like a wave. Not painful, not like the first time. This was different. This was overwhelming. 8 billion voices, each one carrying a lifetime of emotion. Love and loss. Joy and grief. Fear and hope. Everything that humans felt, everything that made them human, was pouring into the minds of beings who had never felt anything like it. Commander Tarai grabbed the arm of his chair as the feelings washed over him. He saw things that were not his memories. A child taking their first steps. An old man holding his wife's hand as she died. Friends laughing together. Strangers helping strangers. 100,000 years of human experience compressed into a single moment. And through it all, the music. The endless, impossible music. Songs from every corner of Earth. Songs that had been sung for generations. Songs that carried the weight of human history in every note. "Commander," someone was saying. "Commander, what are your orders?" Tarai could not answer. He was crying. Real tears, falling from his black eyes for the first time in his life. He did not understand why. He only knew that something inside him was breaking, and what was coming out was not weakness. It was wonder. Across the fleet, other commanders were having the same experience. Some of them ordered their weapons to fire anyway, but their crews did not obey. They could not obey. They were too busy feeling things they had never felt before. One by one, the weapons powered down. The fleet stopped. On Earth, the singing continued. Nobody knew what was happening above them. They sang because they did not know what else to do. They sang because it was the only weapon they had. They sang because they were human, and humans had been singing since the beginning. Finally, a voice came through the communication channels. It was Tarai. His voice was rough, changed. "Earth vessel," he said. "This is Commander Tarai of the Vethry fleet." Jiho stepped forward. "This is Admiral Jiho. We hear you." There was a long pause. "What have you done to us?" Tarai asked. Jiho looked at the monitors. At the fleet that had come to destroy them, now sitting still and silent among the stars. At his crew, still singing softly around him. At his grandmother's prayer beads, worn smooth by decades of hope. "We did nothing to you," he said. "We just showed you who we are." Another pause. When Tarai spoke again, his voice was different. Softer, almost gentle. "You are not savages," he said. "I understand that now. You are the architect's children." The divine language was never lost. It was simply growing up. He took a breath. "We will not attack. I cannot promise what the council will do, but I will tell them what I felt today. And I do not think I am the only one who will remember." The Vethry fleet turned and left. They did not fire a single shot. On Earth, the singing slowly stopped. People hugged each other. They cried. They laughed. They had no idea what had just happened, but they knew that they were alive. That humanity was alive. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, carried on frequencies that no machine could detect, the architects heard their children finally speaking. They had been waiting a very long time, and they were so very proud. 50 years later, Yuna gave her final lecture at the Galactic Academy. She was old now, her hair white and her steps slow, but her voice was still strong. "They called us savages," she said to the audience. 1,000 different species gathered to hear the woman who had changed the galaxy. And maybe we were. We hurt each other. We made terrible mistakes. We almost destroyed our own world. She smiled. But we also sang. In our darkest moments, when everything seemed lost, we found each other through music. That is the divine language. Not power, not technology, just the simple act of reaching across the darkness and saying, I am here. I feel, and I want you to feel too. She stepped away from the podium. Now, she said, let me teach you a song. And in that room, for the first time in galactic history, 1,000 species raised their voices together. Some sang with sound. Some sang with light. Some sang with vibrations that humans could not hear. But they all sang. It was just a lullaby. The oldest kind of magic. But it was enough. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, something ancient and beautiful smiled. The children had finally learned to sing. The end.